Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We've got a great presentation lined up for you today, but before we get started, there are just a few general admin points to cover. First and foremost, please use the online question tool to post any questions that you have and we will share them with our speakers. Second, if you experience any technical difficulties today, please let us know using that same questions tool and a member of our admin team will be on hand to support you. And finally, just to note, this session is being recorded and we'll be sharing a copy of that recording with you via email in the coming days. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our speakers to get us started.
Thank you, Lucy. So it's really great for us, Rouse and Lusheng, to host this very joint, exciting event for talking about NFT in China. And we're going to focus really on the marketing campaign, how that used in marketing campaign and licensing. So before we really starting on the substance of this, and so next slide, please, Holly. So we'll let you know, firstly, the speakers of today is myself, which is leading the digital and commercial services at Lusheng. And then there was my colleague, Sunny, who joined from our Beijing office. And yeah, and also there was Holly. And so I'll let them to introduce themselves when they are starting their talks. For me, very briefly, I have been over 30 years of experience in this relevant field on the regulatory, legal, and IP related. With the first 10 years with the China State Council for doing all the IP legislation that gives me, and also other legislations in the ideologically field, publishing, culture, media education, etc. So that gives me quite a good sort of understanding from top down of China's legal system, and especially in relation to IP. And then after that, I joined private practice, Rouse and Lusheng, for now over 20 years, leading the practice, really helping our client, mostly of our multinational client, enter into our markets and explaining, so navigating through the complex field while leveraging their IP in the commercial activities. And so that's me. And so I will maybe at this moment, then this event is organized as a timely to celebrate one of our event, which is the official launch of our digital and commercial service. The value proposition of this service actually is very similar with our practices and service goals over the last 20 years. Actually is really helping our client to come to China to understand the unique complex cutting edge issues in China in the context when they are trying to also protect their brands and leverage the IP they have. And then obviously with that, there was a lot of the commingled legal and regulatory issues that can undermine or affect the commercial activities. So then that's what we are helping to understand those issues, and then after that, helping the client to really articulate and structure their particular proposed business activities. And also that will be a lot of time helping them to enable to make a decision at your own, but with this kind of clear articulation. And then obviously for some of our clients, we will be helping them to implement and manage the particular specific risk during those kind of activities. So I think the value we are trying to perceive over the years is illustrated, I think, quite accurately by one of our clients who recently we helped them with a marketing campaign, which is SP. So you can see, I won't read out her quote, but that's something we are pursuing and continuing to pursue to bring the value to our clients. Okay, next, please. Okay, in today's presentation, we will really focus on 3 issues. One is really on to give you a bit of an overview of how the NFTs are really utilized in marketing and licensing in China. So what's the market looks like. And second is, with that general understanding, we're going to talk about what are the unique NFT issues, how those issues are interrelated and affect the business activities. And then we are going to help you to see how you can approach those issues in a structural way and then manage them accordingly. So that's the 3 issues. I mean, obviously, then we will sum up with the key takeaways. So without further ado from me, I will pass over to my colleague, Holly, who will start with the first part.
Thank you very much, Ling, and thank you to everybody for your time today. It's a pleasure to be able to come and present to you. My name's Holly. I'm Head of Service Development for Digital and Commercial, and I sit in Rouse, based in London in the UK. I have worked for Rouse for almost 5 years now, supporting businesses to successfully utilise their IP. And prior to that, I was a senior diplomat in the British Embassy in Beijing for 4 years, where I also worked very closely with businesses to help them understand the regulatory and political and economic landscape in China and how they can operate. So as Ling says, before we get into sort of lots of the details and the nitty gritty, we just wanted to give you a bit of an overview about NFTs, and particularly within the context of marketing and licensing. What we're seeing in China now is a lot of brands, there's examples on the left-hand side are mainly international, but also Chinese local brands are using NFTs in order to leverage their IP and to boost brand value, and essentially drive consumer engagement and attract traffic to both their digital platforms, but also any physical presence as well, and use it as a way to really sort of build up their presence and look like an innovative and cutting edge and interesting brand in China. And because those are that's the sort of driving reason for using NFTs, we're seeing the business models and the use cases for them in 2 very specific situations. So firstly, we see businesses using them and brands using them as part of marketing campaigns, where NFTs that are created are gifted to consumers, often as part of a lucky draw or a competition. Generally, these NFTs are pretty restricted in numbers, and so they're given an extra importance and excitement, and it's a real honor for consumers to hold one of these NFTs. The second model that we're seeing is using a licensing approach, so licensing characters and brands and images to third parties to create new NFTs and new digital products to be sold. Although those products are being sold, their main purpose isn't revenue generation. And we'll look at a bit more in this presentation about how some of the regulation of NFTs and the associated technologies are also driving the way NFTs are being used in China. So as I mentioned, there is a lot of regulation, so it is a complex landscape, but NFTs still can be highly effective if aligned with the target audience. And so, as with most markets, it's Generation Z that are mostly interested in NFTs and get really excited about them. So the brands are using NFTs to target those audiences. So as long as that aligns with what you're trying to do, you really should be considering using NFTs and how you can leverage that new technology. Before, again, we get into lots of the detail, we also wanted to pause on what an NFT actually is. And I think there's much debate about this in various places. But essentially, NFTs have many different functions and forms and can be used in quite a lot of different ways. So as Ling said, here we really want to be quite clear about how they apply in the marketing or licensing context. And so what we see is that an NFT simply enables the trading of an underlying digital asset or sort of an intangible work to drive brand interest, as we say. So the core of the NFT, of course, is this digital asset, which is existing or newly created content. And quite often it's artwork, but it could be videos or music, and whatever the brand deems that will generate the interest that they're looking for from their consumers. Because it's often used in this new and different way, its content is often newly created, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be existing. So you have that underlying digital content. Then the next step, of course, is to be able to mint that content into into an NFT token. And you can think about that as actual product creation. And at that stage, the smart contract is formulated and with fixed terms and conditions. The smart contract, of course, is then placed onto the blockchain as the record of ownership. And that blockchain essentially enables the token that has been created to be displayed, and so making it quite tangible. So we think of it as well as making a more tangible version of an intangible artwork, if you like. And because it can be seen and owned, it also makes it tradable, which of course then brings in the need to have an NFT platform or a marketplace. And they obviously function as a retailer or distributor of that NFT product. For China, it's just worth reflecting on the fact that because of the regulations of technologies and the way it's structured within China, a lot of those technologies are provided by the same provider. And so there's quite a lot of interrelation between them. So we kind of see the digital assets as one part, and then the technology as the second part that essentially brings the NFT to life. So then we also wanted to look at another topic that is quite often debated as well, is what IP rights are really associated with the NFT as well. Really, as we've just talked about, because the core of the NFT is that original digital asset, we see that that is where the IP sits. So that is the original copyrighted work. On this slide, we have drawn a comparison here with creating an NFT versus creating an artwork for sale. It's probably a very simplistic comparison, and you may be able to think of other versions as well to compare the digital to a physical artwork, but we hope this helps kind of illustrate the point that we're trying to make, that essentially the IP is that original copyrighted work. When you mint that NFT, you are just creating a copy essentially of that original work for sale, but there are no new rights created. There's nothing extra added to that process. And then there's this obviously recorded on the blockchain, as I say. Again, that doesn't really change anything about the original IP right, but it does at least provide a benefit in that it sets out the rights associated with that NFT, which is really to own, display, or sell, but it doesn't give you any right to the original IP. And so we're comparing that here in a similar way to after the artist has created their painting, then they make a print and sign it and frame it and give it its sort of provenance and create it as to a product. And then finally, obviously, you go on to sell that, or in the case of an NFT, potentially gift it via a platform. Again, that platform service and to sell the NFT doesn't create any new rights. It doesn't give the platform or owners who buy that NFT any particular rights to the original IP. Of course, the platform might have some obligations not to sell the IP infringing goods, and this might be stronger, particularly in the case of an NFT than an actual art auction house, say, or an art gallery. And that's something that we'll talk about a bit later on in the presentation. But I just hope that this example does help to kind of illustrate that really the main IP that we're talking about, or the IP that we are talking about when we talk about NFTs, is that sits in the existing underlying digital asset. And then finally, just in terms of the framing, thinking about using NFTs, they are not risk-free. And particularly in China, there is particular risks around regulation and regulation non-compliance. Given that obviously the whole purpose is to build brand value and interest, anything that undermines that should be considered a risk. And the regulatory non-compliance, of course, will damage brand reputation. Given the eye-catching nature of NFTs, they will be noticed and picked up, and it means that brands are exposed to potentially negative press or fines for regulatory non-compliance. And as you can see on the right-hand side, again, I've put down the diagram of the NFT. And as I've already mentioned, a lot of that technology is quite highly regulated, very specifically towards China. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. So that real consideration needs to be given to those elements when you're using those elements in an NFT, and then not only in its creation, but how that's then going to be sold or used or gifted. The other big issue that we see is intellectual property. And then this is not particularly a China-specific issue, and the issues apply everywhere. As we have said, the IP issues really belong to the digital asset that's created. And you want to make sure that once that asset's created, of course, your IP is not being infringed, but you don't accidentally infringe others' IP in the process of creating artwork for an NFT. The IP risks continue and play out over quite a long time frame, because obviously that NFT is going to exist on platforms in people's wallets and will be bought and sold potentially multiple times. So there needs a lot of kind of forethought about how the intellectual property is going to be used and how it's potentially going to be exposed. There is a slight element of regulatory relating to digital assets, and we'll talk about that again in more detail later on, but that focuses mainly on sort of censorship and content type issues. But so the bulk of the regulation, as I say, sits with the technology. So I hope that gives you a bit of an overview and a background to how we're going to be talking about NFTs today, and where we see the big risks arising. And so with that, I will pass over to Ling to talk to you in a bit more detail about the unique issues that we're seeing from NFTs.
Okay, thank you, Holly. I think with that, let's dive into this particular issues. So we would like to approach the issues into firstly, I mean, obviously, we need to understand what are the unique issues that brought about by the NFT, which is a unique part of the nature of this thing that attached into or connected with the digital artwork. So basically, if you understand, I think most of you are really from overseas background, so you understand the NFT is generally freely to be created and tradable in various platforms if the technology are there. But in China, I think most important and the first unique issue is the cryptocurrency, which is based on the similar blockchain technology, is banned in China. And so with that ban, that has very heavily influence and impact on how the blockchain technology in general, and especially on the NFT, with the smart contract players and platform players, how they operated. So so the big issue, typical issues, firstly, you see NFTs are not called as NFT in China. It's called as digital collectible. Nobody can use the NFT, the word itself, because it's a close association with the FTs or the cryptocurrencies. And second, in China, the fundamental reason to ban the cryptocurrency is in the worry about speculation and all money laundering that can be associated with that technology and decentralized, control. So it's really out of the government's control. So that's something clearly don't wanted by China. But NFTs, similar to cryptocurrency, had that technical capability. That's why they have to they have to use a way to stop the trading. So which is going to be impact on the, so we will talk about it a bit later here. And the third most prominent feature of it is because they don't want speculations and money laundering. So the NFTs or the digital collectibles only be able to sold in not perceived as very high value. So usually, no matter how valuable you perceive it, can be only labeled as a low price. As a gift or as some kind of the not very expensive products per se. And with that, the ban as a general regulation, so you can see some of the detailed consequences on the players in the market. Firstly, it is every players related in this blockchain technology developer or the minting company or the platform are also all controlled by a qualification, and so basically they have to receive a license from the government before they can operate in this space. And obviously, there was quite high requirement and limitations on the players now. There are only a bunch of selected players that can be really operating in this market. And second is really in order to, as we see, to stop the trading part of it and speculation part of it. And so the blockchain are developed somewhat a China version of it, which is typically called a lines chain or private chain, which is basically means it's not interoperable in other blockchain platform to enable. So basically, any NFT minted with a China blockchain technology and smart contract cannot be displayed in other platform, which is not using the same blockchain technology. So that effectively stop the trading or displaying of that NFT products in other platforms, especially not can't be displayed in any international platforms. Yeah, and another very unique features about the control is all the users of those platforms are need to provide their authentic identity before they are allowing to play and receive an NFT, a digital gift. So that's in a way of to control the users to stop any of those illegal activities. Next one, please. Okay, so with that general regulation, then we can let's look at how the government are actually enforced against, in the market. Firstly, from the as we mentioned, the government are firstly only select the platform which they trust through those certificates and licenses, and then once those platforms receives those licenses, they are watching them very closely. And at this moment, in order to avoid any big mistakes, they usually once they identify any of them small issue or trend, which is they are not comfortable, and they will be ask them for meetings and resolve those issues before they are getting really serious. So that's it's a way to prevent those kind of big issues. And obviously, those platforms has to rectify before they can re-operate those as the government wished. And so with that government's attitude and enforcement measures, obviously the platforms are so yeah, obviously those platforms are very careful and conservative in really testing the market which is trying to not step any of the red lines, the government said. And obviously, the bigger the platforms, and the more careful and the more aligned with the government requirement, with some of the smaller platforms maybe a little bit for testing the boundaries more actively than the bigger ones. And we give 2 examples here to illustrate how the market sentiments at this moment. And you can see, firstly, is a one that Alibaba, Alipay are which is a platform allowed by the government, are having a campaign with one of the China's famous artistic collectible images. But once those images, NFTs, are being appeared in the secondary market, which is idle fish, which is the Alibaba's secondary market, then because in China they, and at that time especially, they're stopping with any of the trading of it, so that will be quickly removed from the shelf. Second is really on the WeChat, which is the biggest social media platform in China. There was, initially there are some of the appearance of the NFT in their many programs, but very quickly you can see WeChat has taken down actions to stop any of those kind of unlicensed NFT showing in their platform. Okay. Next one, please. Okay, with those kind of very unique regulatory issues caused by NFTs, now let's dive into what are the particular IP issue as a result of this kind of process of associating with an NFT. Firstly, as Holly mentioned, that's very typically there could be some kind of more sort of suitable new digital asset being created to suit that particular marketing campaign or licensing purpose. And with that creation, and obviously because it's a more sort of a digital version and for unique purposes, it can be created by another artist, specialist artist to do that. And then there is coming to an issue. Firstly, how much is the brand's own identity, logos, or trademarks being used into those digital artwork. And secondly, and related to that, whether they should own the new artwork that has been created, because that's typically can incorporate some of their existing IP in it. Whether they should own the new ones or they only get a license. What are the pros and cons with it? And especially if you don't own it, the challenges is how you can control the underlying your existing IP that has been incorporated into the new digital artwork. That's a particular challenge. So there was a lot of the IP implication, but in the context of the business implications as well. And then if you really are not owning it in particular, what the restrictions on the owners, the copyright owners in using the new digital artwork. So that's a lot of deliberation you have to understand. And second, with this unique nature, we see there was a split between a tangible ownership of a tangible copy, which is by our third-party users or receivers, individual receivers, or versus really from the brand perspective, how you can control the intangible underlying artwork. So, I mean, obviously, as Holly said, that's not really connected. It's not an issue that really connected by an NFT. It can be in other occasions, like a painting with the example that she given. But because the particular delivery model and other things, then obviously makes the business consideration and all other conditions more sort of need require a special attention or expertise experiences to make it more sort of suitable to this your business need. And one is created, and then obviously because of the long lifetime of this kind of NFT over the universe and the metaverse. So then how you can really control the individual owners who has that copy, because the digital artwork itself can be in some occasions misused, and then how you can stop that easily in which is different scenarios. And obviously typically with this eye catching attentions, how you can make sure those clearance are been really controlled, because the particular difficulty is the multiple parties that can be involved in this process, and how a brand owner can really exercise their control, and whether they should exercise their control effectively. I will talk about a little bit later in when we have a chart to demonstrate the parties, stakeholders that can be involved. And so that's with I think the complications is not only caused by the NFT and also the typical standard IP issues, but also because of the multiple parties, the split of the responsibilities and in this kind of particular delivery creation and the delivery model. That will be make a lot of the issues and thinkings to enforce those controls in the right timing, in the right document or mechanisms. And another unique nature of it, clearly the platform in this way, they are very, especially in China, they are very much closely linked with the blockchain technology and the minting process. So they are play a bigger role in making this product come to the market. And then obviously they should, as there are some kind of clearance or cases already indicate, they should bear more stricter or contributory liabilities in case if there is anything goes wrong with the infringement of the digital artwork. So Sunny will be talking a bit more in details on this and share a case relating to this. I think to sum up with this, with the particular challenges we see in when we were helping in those particular business implementations of a client, and over especially the last 6 months when this one is really in place, is really with the ability to approach, to anticipate the scenarios and the consequences. That's obviously not easy, because there was a lot of things you can't rely on your existing experiences. So you have to really have a good ways to anticipate how your IP may be and how the regulation may evolve. That can affect your IP. And then obviously, as I said, everyone is learning, and the business is learning, and we are learning. But then how you can quickly apply your existing experience and learning, and then put it into something meaningful ways to help the business to implement. So that's something I think particularly valuable at this moment. Okay, next, please. Okay, so this is, I think, a simple illustration of the complexity of the relationship and the parties that can be typically involved in a marketing campaign or a licensing scenario. And so as you can see in the marketing scenario, because of the special skill set or whatever things with the marketing campaign, there's typically a marketing agency can be involved in driving this whole initiative. And with them, are particular dealing with the third-party artists who are creators. And with those kind of part of the creation, I think with this kind of multiple parties there, as the particular issue, especially on the IP issue, we talk about how the communication and the lines of the interest and especially from the IP functions of the clients, the IP owners, how the IP are really clearly understood and planned and anticipated in those early stage of the driving of the marketing designs. So that will be sometimes it's very challenging. In some of the examples we see, it's sometimes missed by the marketing firms or the third parties to be really that could be some of loss of the control if this is not clearly articulated or controlled. And then obviously, usually it's the marketing agencies are dealing with the selecting and dealing with the technology part of the company, the making and the distribution. And with a brand owner, then how you can ensure without even a privity of the contract, your what you expect can be, the goals can be clearly and accurately implemented through this process. And another challenging part with is, as we mentioned, is the particular tangible copy of your artwork will be received by a receiver, and this can be retraded and and can be used, maybe gifted or something. So how you can control this individual receivers, which is you don't necessarily have a direct contract with. And so that will be having a lot of implications, and to see how they can insert or exert that control. And in the licensing scenario, there are something in common, but and there are some news. The typical some new things is what we see now is from the brand owner, because of the regulatory or the other commercial part of it, they are typically not really stayed close involved into the minting or identifying. So they would rather like to be a licensor and license their IP into a licensee who typically organize the whole printing and making and then distribution of it, and they receive our royalties through this licensing process. And as I mentioned, because of the nature of this kind of multiple party and without privity contract, and also anticipate what could be the scenarios of misuse, that brings particular more challenges to the client to ensure all the parties are exercise the reasonable caution to control the regulatory risk, and as well as the other risks that the IP particular risk that the brand owner. And one typical issues when we're talking about in China now, you're only allowed to do one sale, so you're not allowed to resell. But we see with the evolving of the regulation that could be possible. So then how you can anticipate those resale scenarios in your contract with various parties. So that's another thing that has to be taken into consideration. Okay, next one, please. So with that kind of general illustration of those issues, and some are regulatory and how and some are IP and how they are interrelated with each other, and now we want to apply that in a particular scenario that to give a more specific understanding about the risk that can be for a brand can face in this kind of scenario. Next, please. Hello, next, please.
I think it should just be loading, Ling. It should be there in a second.
Okay, now, yeah, good. Now see it. So firstly, I would like to use our marketing scenario. I think what we see, firstly, the difficulties on really making a business decisions on this kind of marketing campaign is how you can really understand the risk and structure the risk. All the issues in a way that can ensure all the risks are identified and can be mitigated. So that's a particular challenge. And so what we see, the approach may be very important. Then by breaking it down, in this example, you can see clearly what are the regulatory, what are the IP risks, what are the particular NFT related issues, and what are the other issues in the marketing campaign, the lucky draw, as we talk about the gaming, the other content censorship, and how, and under this particular context, what are the specific issues under that particular categories, and then who will be having a best understanding about those kind of particular issues, then they are jigsaw together when you're quantifying the risks. And then similarly, for the IP related risk, you can see the same. And you have the maybe break down it into IP owner, the NFT, the copy owners, the artist, and also there are other parties maybe having a relationship with the IP. So how you can ensure all those kind of scenarios and pro cons are clearly understood and considered. And we want to just give you examples of some of the common risks we see in the recent deals we have helped. Firstly is, I think typically it could be because of there was a lot of the business considerations. Usually the marketing team are driving this kind of initial initiatives, and the IP teams and the IP ownerships things and all the IP related issue may can be considered at a quite a later stage, which is sometimes you see maybe a little bit too late to change and harder for you to make a business decision because there has some kind of unideal situations in relation to your brand. For example, like whether you should incorporate your corporate logos into the ones, and maybe the IP team has a more sort of better understanding of the overall value of it, and also the ownership issues as we talked about earlier. You should own or not should own. What's the value of that? And secondly, especially if the artwork is not owned, so you don't know. But typically, that could be the situation if you are not incorporating a lot of your existing IP into the new digital artwork. Then how you can ensure you have the best leverage. And if the IP team is not involved, sometimes we see they're not getting the best terms of the usage of the artwork, which is can be a very valuable things that should be negotiated in the beginning. And obviously, as we say, the marketing agency and they are typically have a little different views or stake interest in this kind of deal. And so if you only implement all those kind of IP, especially the IP related terms through them, may sometimes not be necessarily the sometimes getting the best deal as you hope. So if you can work together or somewhat control that process, that could be sometimes better for a brand owner. Okay, so now this is some of the common issues. So now I will pass to Sunny to talk about the other scenarios that we see that what could be how those issues are correlated.
Okay, thank you so much, Ling, for your sharing. And I'm Sunny, and I will by this chance to briefly introduction some experience of our licensing for the NFT issues. And we recently deal with some of the cases for this licensing involved in the NFT. And commonly, we will think about the two types of issues. And one is regulatory issues, and another one is IP issues. For the regulatory issues, as Ling has mentioned, and in China, an NFT just caused as artist work and collectibles, and for the NFT platform and for the leading NFT platform, it's not allowed to reselling. And in the agreement of license, the IP owner should pay much attention for this one. And for the pricing, and because the PRC government just want to avoid speculation for this NFT products, so the price should be not much high, and the average, or in most cases, the range should be in the $15 US to $50 US, but in regular issue, in regular aspect, higher price will trigger much more attention by the government, so maybe more attention for this one. And for the IP issues, in our several NFT license issues, the IP owner will license their existing IP rights to the licensee to create a new artwork and further turn into NFT for distribution. For this kind of scenarios, and the original IP owner should pay much attention to review the new artwork as a derivative work and to have IP clearance, and there is no infringement and no culture issues. And we just noticed some of the artists want to involve some landmark into the new artwork, but we need clearance for this kind of use, not only for the copyright, also for the trademark or design, or for the trade dress issues. And another issue is IP contract issues. And because in most cases, the original IP license owner have no direct contract with the artist how to control their IP owner for the new artist work. So it is an issue, and it is a kind of privity of contract issue. And our suggestion is always to review their contract between the licensee and the artist, and how to arrange their IP ownership and how to make them to apply to the or align with the original IP arrangement. It is a potential issue to be considered. And this way, we will reduce the IP infringement issues in most cases. And next one, please. Okay, and it is a very interesting case, and it is the first litigation case in for the NFT in China. And the case is very simple, and a known user just upload others' work into an NFT platform and without the necessary license. And the platform just did not carefully check their license. And so it's just to distribute to others to buy. And the exclusive licensee just to sue the platform, and because they can't identify the user who upload this artwork, and they just the licensee just sue the platform for copyright infringement because they have no license to do that, and also they have to breach their duty of care, and they have, from the technical issues, they can mostly control the activement procedure, and also for the whole procedure of distribution. But the platform argued that they are just served as a general internet service provider. They cannot bear more duty for this kind of transactions. And but the court just supports the plaintiff just claims and consider that the platform just breach their duty, and because they just charge some commission fees from the selling, also they can substantively control the whole process, and they can just control the smart contract. For this kind of contributions, they should bear the breach, the infringement. And in this case, most of the issues should be typical as general IP infringed cases, but the product is NFT. It is an interesting case, and the platform just appealed this case for the secondary instance, and they argue that they cannot bear so much duties because there's no existing law to govern these issues. We generally agree with the first instance, but we just think the first court did not clearly clarify some of the issues, such as the publication rights and exhausting of the rights, these kind of issues, closely with the NFT issues. So we are just waiting for the second instance for this case, and to watch what the judge will change their minds, or the platform will get again just be punished by their infringement. Okay, this is the most cases we want to share by this time, limited time.
Okay, and so now I think with those, hopefully I think you have somewhat a better or clearer views how the NFTs are really used in China, and how you, as a legal counsel or as IP counsel, how you can approach the issues, and why those issues are interrelated, and how they are really interrelated, and what is the underlying drives of those issues. And then that will be help you to give abilities to articulate the issues in a more clear ways in your business context. And second is really able to anticipate the evolving nature of that issues. So what we see in this kind of, especially those kind of cutting edge new issues, and the legal counsels and IP counsel should play a bigger role in the business. Firstly, if obviously they need to be helping the business to, at the planning stage, to understand the core IP issues and the regulatory issue, because sometimes they are not that obvious when at that business planning stage. So so that should be clearly understood first. And second, and obviously how you can strike a deal with who, and the proper due diligence, and then make sure this is achieve the best you know business goals in the short time and limited budget. And so that will be I think the structuring and understand the issue, and make sure the relevant stakeholders are understand and taking implement that through either internal processes, or the exerted into the third party liabilities, either through your agencies or through your licensees or through the other parties, and even you don't have a contract with, how you can structure the deals in the best way for business to make a decision. So that's the second. I mean, thirdly, obviously, when typically the legal and IP counsel can play a role when they are coming to the particular implementations. And in this part, obviously, as I say, the challenges is really the multiple stakeholders and multiple issues are correlated, because that not necessarily just relate to one particular part of the business function. So then how you can work together effectively as a team to make sure this is delivered in a satisfactory way, and all the reasonable risk are really understood and if controlled. Okay, with that, I would like to close our presentation. And so Holly, you can
Yeah, so the
see whether we
questions,
have
Ling.
any questions in the question chat box. Yes.
That's right, that's right. So if people are looking to use NFTs in China, how do they go about finding and knowing that the partners that they're working with are sort of trusted? So making sure that the blockchain providers and the platforms and the minting companies are validated companies to work with.
Okay. So maybe I gave answer on that question. So obviously, as I mentioned, so there are regulations on who what licenses, qualifications are required as a first place. So obviously, you need to check the particular parties whether they are in the they were granted with that qualification or certificate. That's checkable because that's in the government record. All the players, their qualifications are published, searchable. So that's the first thing. Obviously, you are looking, and even with that qualifications, that doesn't necessarily they have the how to say, the right sort of experiences. Obviously, if you can look at what other similar activities they already implemented, and that will be helpful. And thirdly, then you usually I think the challenges is you not only look at the parties you are dealing with, you need to understand are there any related party, and what are the really how the work are handled by the related party. Is there any missing, controls of it? So, and also, especially in China now, at this moment, I think if you will check whether they have any of the government connections, because usually if it is government-backed players, they are usually more cautious on making sure they are able to do it.
Great, thank you very much, Ling. We've talked about NFTs and the IP rights, but how can you use an NFT to guarantee authenticity of the original art or of the NFT and the artwork being used in it?
Holly, do you want to answer that?
Yes, I can do if you like, Ling. So in terms of looking at the authenticity and guaranteeing it, clearly, as I've talked about before, when we mint the NFT and create the smart contract, that token in being created demonstrates the link to the artwork itself. And of course, that record is stored on the blockchain. So as it is sold or gifted to additional owners, then that can be tracked. So it can be tracked from its beginning and its creation and who has created it. So you can see that the person who has created the token has the rights to the IP on the underlying artwork. So although there is a way for NFTs to guarantee the authenticity, there is of course the complication on platforms where you can sort of in theory have a situation where somebody who doesn't own the IP can still create a token from that NFT, make it into an NFT. And that's where we see the challenges arising in terms of infringements on NFTs. And so that is something that kind of needs to be monitored and followed. And of course, different platforms will have different procedures and approaches to taking action against those infringing IPs. But that is also why the case that Sunny mentioned is particularly interesting, because it demonstrates in China that in theory the platforms do have an emphasis and a focus in making sure that the tokens and NFTs that are traded do have the original IP rights. So that will also support guaranteeing authenticity. So I think that's it for questions for the moment, Ling, and we're sort of at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, it is nicely, I think, obviously, as the organizers, so we want to thank the organizers, Law Business Research, for organizing this. And so you will get a copy of the slides, and obviously you will see our contacts there. And if you have any further more sort of specific questions, we are really happy to answer them when we see them. Okay, great. Thank you for participating, and hopefully that's something helpful for you to understanding the fuss of NFT in China. Thank you.
Thank you.